Ladies and gentlemen, meet the brand spanking new Fiat 500X. And Fiat flew me out here to sunny California to test drive this newest Fiat. And the biggest question on my mind is, how is this vehicle different from the Jeep Renegade? It is the same chassis, it has the same engine choices, and I have a very special guest presenter who has actually driven the Renegade.
500.
All right, Nathan, you've driven the Renegade. We're about to drive this, so let's find out how this differs from the Jeep.
That's going to be cool.
And that is coming up next on the Fast Lane Car.
Non più tra i farfalloni amoroso, notte e giorno di torno girano, delle belle turbando al riposo, Narcisetto a dolcino d'amor. Delle belle turbando al riposo, Narcisetto a dolcino d'amor.
Taking inspiration from the original 500, this vehicle has, well, frankly, only a little bit of the real 500 in it, but there are places that it has it. The engineer, the guy who actually designed a lot of the outside of this vehicle, took us through it and showed us that right up here, you can see a lot of the Fiat 500 heritage. Right here, the whiskers, the way the front end pushes out, the roundish headlights. Yes, it's not exactly a Fiat 500 from the front, but it is a lot more handsome than the Fiat 500L. In fact, I believe this should have been what the 500L looked like right from the very beginning.
It's just not like the Jeep at all, actually. Not at all. The Jeep felt much airier, bigger, and flatter, much more simple decor. Overall feel was very different. This one does feel a little sportier, I think.
Yeah,
just a little.
And I think the American Jeep designers had a much greater role in designing the Jeep than the American Fiat designers. Basically, this was a European design car.
Yeah.
The 500X is a relatively small car by American standards. With the seats up, you're looking at 18.5 cubic feet of space, and if you fold them down, it's a 40-60 split, you get 50.8. That also happens to be the exact identical numbers that you'd get in the Renegade.
So far, it's tight. It's pretty quiet inside, actually. And I think the seats are really comfortable.
Yeah, it's a tidy little package, and Fiat will be quick to point out that this is the first all-new Fiat that's brought to America, right? The previous Fiat 500, the Abarth, the 500L, those are models that were around for a while in Europe and the rest of the world.
Yeah.
But this model is brand new, and it's being sold actually in 100 different countries.
Over 100 different countries. And that's what they're saying, is that they actually co-developed it with the people here in the United States to make sure that this really did cover the full range of consumers. And people in North America are very different in terms of their taste versus the rest of the world. However, straight off the bat, there are a couple things. Air conditioner works really good.
Yeah, it's nice and chilly.
Yeah, where outside it's about 85 degrees. It is spacious enough for two very large men, at least in the front seat. I can sort of sit behind Roman, but my knees squish into the seat. Fortunately, there's a lot of give, so I can actually fit back there.
Ah, yes. There's a lot of room in the front of the 500X, especially with the seat all the way back. But does that compromise rear seat legroom? Luckily, our special guest reviewer will give us a thumbs up or a... What are you doing, Nathan? Ah! So-so.
And it has not one, but two optional sunroofs. Holla, holla.
That's a shout out to you, Emmy.
Something very interesting. First of all, you can get this as a base model, front-wheel drive only, with a 1.4-liter turbocharged engine. That's the same engine that's in the Fiat 500 Abarth. It's the same engine that is available in the base model for the Jeep Renegade. And it is turbocharged, as I said before, and the reason I said it's because it's a great little engine. Puts out 160 horsepower, 184 pound-feet of torque, and it's hooked up to a 6-speed manual transmission only to the front wheels. But that, once again, is just the base model. From there, you have to go to the 2.4-liter multi-air Tiger Shark engine, which is hooked up to a 9-speed automatic transmission. Once again, just like the Jeep Renegade. 180 horsepower and 175 pound-feet of torque. You can get this hooked up to an all-wheel drive system, and it is a special one because it can actually disconnect from the rear end and only allow front-wheel drive under most conditions, and then when it detects slippage, it goes to the rear.
And it has this kind of funky driver select dynamic control, which changes the steering, which changes the shift inputs on the 9-speed automatic that we have here, so you can kind of change the character of the thing.
And the traction control system.
I think we're in auto. Let me put you in sport.
All right.
All right, now you're in sport.
All right, well, you know what? I can tell you right, just touching the pedal, it seems a little bit more sensitive. I'm like letting off and pushing on, and it's, I don't know if you guys can hear that, but it's just like ready to bounce in a lower gear.
Yeah, and Fiat does exhaust notes right. You can't,
yeah.
You can't deny that, Nathan. I mean, it always sounds like you're driving, you know, a baby Ferrari for some reason when you're in a Fiat.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a growl to this one. It definitely has. It's a little bit of brio. Sorry, I had to use something. It's not too bad. There are a couple things right off the bat that there are two issues that I have. One is that I've never been a big fan of the electrically assisted power steering setup that they have. Now in the sport mode, it feels a little bit tighter, but it's still not, to my taste at least, I like a heavier steering wheel. Also, the back windows, they don't roll down all the way. These are small doors, so they only roll down just a little past halfway, which for me and kids or whatever, it's an issue.
Now, you really have two different interiors with the Fiat 500X. There's the base model, which is a little bit cheaper on the inside, and then you have the top of the line, which is fantastic. Really, really high grade, very soft touch leathers. And you could see a lot of what they were thinking just on the door panel alone when they did things like lift the speaker up and make a larger pocket for big bottles. And on top of that, all these wonderful materials. The layout is very logical, and altogether, it's chic. I'm really impressed with it, and I think it's much better looking than the Renegade interior.
Fiat hasn't announced MPG yet, but they're saying over 30 on the highway.
Better be.
Yeah, it better be. But you've driven both, so, you know.
It doesn't feel like the Jeep at all.
Nope.
No, they've done enough.
European.
It really does. Well, if nothing else, it doesn't feel like that. It just feels, it feels a little bit like the Fiat 500L in terms of the decor. But it's a little bit more, with a lower roof, and it's a little bit more intimate.
Yep.
This is sportier. This is the car they should have had, as far as I'm concerned, because the L
I agree, off the bat.
is so polarizing on the outside. And this is a much better looking car. I think it's a great looking little car, but the L is not.
It's got that Mickey Mouse look.
It does. It really, that looks more of a toy, and it has tiny little wheel wells and everything. This is much more muscular, and they really were pushing the masculinity. But despite that, it doesn't really feel like an overly masculine car.
Nathan, this Fiat 500 starts at about 20,000, and if you load it all the way up, it can go over 30,000, which is very similar to the Renegade. So I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
If it were your money, man, the stuff in your wallet, what would you get, the Renegade or the Fiat 500X?
All right, I got it. If I was a city dweller, absolutely would go for the Fiat. But because I'm not, I actually live sort of in the country and I go off-road occasionally in snow, then it would be the Renegade.
That's fair enough. I haven't driven the Renegade, so I'm going to reserve judgment till we get them both in Colorado. As always,
this is Nathan
and Roman saying thanks for watching, and check out tflcar.com for more news, views, and
real-world reviews.
Ciao.
This is one of the comparative vehicles. Nissan's interesting Juke, and this one is all-wheel drive. Now this is the Chevy Trax, but it's only front-wheel drive. And then of course we have the Mini Cooper Countryman all-wheel drive. And finally, something very interesting, the Fiat 500X, but this one has the 1.4 liter engine, which is turbocharged, and a 6-speed manual transmission feeding the front wheels. And that is what we're going to compare to those. And that's coming up next.